Hi guys, Andy N. Spoken Label, the amazing Doug Weissman. Now we've got a bit of kudos and apology here because for once it's not I'm not the one for showing shit for brains here. Doug's held his hands up and he's admitting this one. Now, what have we forgot to mention in the first half, Doug?
I forgot to answer the question directly about how Karen Russell is related to this book. And I went on this tangent that answered the other part of the question. So I just wanted to let it be known that Swamplandia specifically, Karen Russell has this great way of kind of turning real world into a surreal feeling with this kind of underlying ambiance of magic, even if the magic doesn't actually show up, where I actually put magic into this, not like wizards and glass balls, crystal balls, but just with the surrealism, the fabulism coming into play, that I always look at the world in this way. Like, what would happen if I was in an argument with somebody in the middle of a street and then a rainstorm washed somebody away? Like, what, right? What would that look like to somebody watching from a window? And I try to kind of explore that. And that is how those two things merged in this book, Life Between Seconds.
Yeah, how did you get into the work of Karen then? Because it's something I had heard of, but certainly I've not read any of the books, I must admit. So I'm going to make a note of it to certainly have a look at later on. Certainly. So, how did you first discover Karen's work?
She was really popular, and I mean, she still is really popular in the States when she publishes, but Swamplandia was just one of those books in the States that blew up when it came out. And I, of course, was on this bender of like reading all the popular literary fiction, the ones that were kind of breaking through the surface. And I was like, ooh, and this one was getting great reviews. And I heard her interviews. And I was like, oh, I want to read this. And obviously I did. And it was just something that resonated with me along the way of for the reasons that I mentioned.
Yeah, that's fair play. It's not like it's people obviously will research Karen. They will discover like she's only done the one novel to date, hasn't she? But she's done 3 short story collections.
Yeah.
Have you read any of her short story collections as well as the novels?
Not the collections as a whole, but I've always done kind of that's me with all short story collections. Is like I'll buy the book, but then I'll read a bits and pieces here, which is what short story collections are great for, I think. Like Kelly Link, I always buy Kelly Link short story, and then I'll only read like a handful of them along the way, and then I'll go back maybe a year or two later, be like, oh yeah, I didn't read these other ones, and then so I'll do it like batches, and that's kind of how I did with Karen Russell and all short stories.
Yeah, no, of course, getting completely that straight away. Now, anyway, listen, we're now going to wrap up the interview part anyway. I promise you now, everybody now. So, well, I have had it before now, and I hope that Doug's not one of these guests that will throw a curveball or something halfway towards the end of it, which I've had happen before now. So, that's what I didn't realise. But seriously now, Doug's now going to read out 2 extracts from his brilliant novel for us. So, when you're ready, mate, over to you.
Yeah. So this is actually from chapter 1. Peter loved to hear the story of how his father tried to steal the sun. It's the reason the poppies exist, his mother said. Your dad had climbed into the sky and touched the light, actually had his hands gripped around the sun. What did it feel like? Peter asked. Have you ever touched a really hot light bulb? His mom said. But the sun burned his hands. He pulled away the scattered sunlight over the field, causing all these bright poppies to grow. The sun, angry for having been caught, fell that night. It falls every night. But that was the first time. It fell and sulked and didn't come back. Your dad gave us these beautiful fields of flowers, but he also brought the darkness. Peter held tight to his bear in the back seat. The promise of darkness didn't scare him, but the wind always made him nervous. He inhaled the scent of the bear's fur like wood and soil. The poppies shone orange along the horizon, where flower petals covered the earth like unmelted snowfall. The world pulsed and breathed as it passed through the window into the back seat of the car. The blizzard of orange in the distance cascaded in the breeze. The closer the car came to the poppies, the lower the sun fell. Peter's mom always called it a game. Like chicken, they had to make it to the field before the sun set. The field had become their escape, our escape, Sam and Peter's. Peter asked who Sam was. His mom said she was Sam. He didn't stop calling her mom. This is a place we can run, and they ran there often. Peter would watch his mom paint, more often try to paint. But Peter wanted to run, to shoot through the poppies and feel the brush of the petals on his skin as the wind trailed behind him.
Excellent stuff. No, great start on that one, mate. I'm always a believer. I'm going to ask you a quick question and digressing slightly on this. Whenever you do start novels off or books, you've got to really grab the reader, haven't you, in one way or another. So,
Yeah.
was the beginning of this book always going to start off that way, or did you find you were looking at different approaches when the book first started?
Oh, I had a completely different opening when I started this book. And this was, I think, originally the concept for maybe chapter 3, but as I was kind of mentioning earlier, that surrealist, that fabulism, that magical aspect, I felt, to grab the reader with that understanding from the beginning. Otherwise, by the time they got to that, they would be so confused. Like, well, where did this come from? We were set in reality, and now all of a sudden there's this kind of surreal aspect happening, and I have no clue what's going on. But then when I was looking at that scene, I was like, oh, well, if I start it like a story, kind of like a once upon a time, I feel like it gives me that latitude to then push in the magic and that ethereal kind of storytelling aspect, that so the reader won't be confused or feeling like it's out of left field when some of that magic does come in.
No, great suggestion. I think it's a real concept. Good way to have seen the setter in that first chapter is brilliant. Okay, I know you're going to give us another extract now, aren't you? So
yeah,
to you then, mate.
So actually, I'm going to read the original start. And so it's still in here. It's just not at the beginning anymore. All right. Sam had never heard of a bear on a boat, but here she sat on a boat with a bear. But it wasn't a boat. Not really. She sat in a tub in the ocean, but if she could sit in it and it floated, to Sam, it was a boat. The sun bounced off the water and the water bounced off the tub and made the light unbearable, stuck in Sam's eyes like a stack of needles while she searched for the needle she wanted. The sun never set, not that she remembered. In the daylight hours, an eternal horizon, an eternal sea, an eternal burning sun. The boat rocked or swayed. She drifted from side to side, back and forth, without any reprieve from the light or the rock or the wet and the dry, if she could be wet and dry at the same time. The bear wore an eye patch and button-down pajamas that mapped the galaxy. He stared over the side of the porcelain and peered into the blue, dark water. It was the bear, the stupid bear that she knew she needed and wanted, that she was happy to have around for every minute he wouldn't shut up, because she wanted to be around someone, was happy to be around someone when sometimes she thought she saw land on the horizon, a boy standing on the hilltops looking down on them, a familiar shadow she couldn't place in the endless life of hers that may not have been a life at all. How'd you get that patch? Sam asked. Fishing, the bear said. What kind of fishing? She asked. The kind that gets dangerous when you don't pay attention, he said with a heavy German accent. A bear and a boat and a mast and the sea. There was a moment when Sam thought she saw a flash in the distance smash against the already bright sky, like a familiar memory of summer lightning. A picture painted of a day when nothing in particular happened, the strangeness of the nothing of ordinariness, the extraordinary of the regular, the regularity she found in the extraordinary. Except she didn't see the beauty in that eternal sky anymore, if she had ever seen it at all.
Excellent. No, really good extract there. Now, what made you want to obviously then? I don't want to give too much away here because I'm thinking about structure and anything else. You just dropped the hint there. That was the original going to be the intro. And what made you want to move it backwards then into later part of the book?
It was a couple reasons. One thing was actually, I got a note from an agent who wanted to take all of the magical realism out of the book altogether. But I was not ready to do that. And I'm glad I didn't do that because, the way the book turned out. But it made me think, or made me realize that when I started with this chapter, people didn't know where the book was going. And so I needed to at least give them some sort of guide light to be like, okay, here is one character in the first chapter, or at least two characters in the first chapter that you'll meet. And then you introduce two new characters in the second chapter, and very separate, right? We have Peter and Sam in the first chapter, Sophia and Gaston in the second chapter. And so by the time we get to the third chapter, we have the reintroduction of Sam in a completely new space where now people can be like, oh, wait, Sam from the first chapter, and now she's here. What happened? How did she get to this space? And I thought this is a better mystery for people to want to unravel, as opposed to starting with this chapter and people not really having that connection or grounding of space and of people.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's a good point, that one. I think sometimes you need to just take it a slightly different direction, don't you? What may think was the obvious is needs sometimes in reflection is not. So no, great choice.
Thank you.
All the best for the book, Doug. Anyway, and please keep in touch, okay? I definitely want to get you back on again next year and talk about Silverclés of France. There were Dexter connotations in Paris. And like I said, with enough notice, I even see my wife about that because, well, that could get a very interesting podcast. That's all I'm going to say, right? So
I'm looking forward to it. That'll be so much fun.
I'll put it in my diary and make a note. I'll speak to you back in the next year, end of the year, definitely when I'm done. I'll love you on again, mate. You've been great fun and great company. So
thank you. You have too. I just want the book to come out so I can come back so much sooner.
You will get your back when you're ready, I promise you. So, anyway, guys and girls, that's it today from another episode of Doug's Spoken Label. As I said before, Doug's been a fantastic guest, and I wholeheartedly recommend his book. It's been great fun. Okay, as Don Callis over at AEW Wrestling says, stay safe and stay over. And we will see you all be well next time.